Thank you for inviting me here. It's very good to be down here. The Bible says that man is fearfully and wonderfully made, Psalm 139. And I believe that is true even if he has laryngitis as well. So I will try to get through this talk with a cup of tea and a cup of coffee down here. If you are a Christian, I hope that you find this talk encouraging to see how wonderfully we are designed. And if you're a skeptic, I hope that what I say in the talk will encourage you to seek after spiritual things. And whatever you believe, I'm sure you'll enjoy some of the pictures and interesting facts of this talk. And it's also going to be about the over-design of man. It's something I've written about in my books and spoken about in my DVDs, that we are designed for much more than survival. Just to give you one example of this, if any of you have a Triumph motorbike, you have very good taste. I've just finished a contract with Triumph motorbikes to help them design better motorbikes, and they have what's called over-design, because they are designed for much more than just travelling from A to B. They're more beautiful than they need to be. They sound more beautiful than they need to just to get from A to B. In a way, they're more expensive than they need to be, but they're worth every penny because they're over-designed. And if you ever read a book by atheists or books on evolution, they'll often say that if we have evolved by chance, we should not be over-designed at all. But if you look carefully at the human body, we are clearly designed for more than survival, and that's a key aspect of my talk. In fact, the Bible explains this, because the Bible says that we are made in God's image and that we are just below the angels. It says in Psalm 8, according to the philosophy of this world, man is just above the beasts, like another animal, a very good animal, but just above the beasts. But the Bible says something really different, that we're just below the angels. There's a huge gap between what the Bible says and what the world says. As a professor of engineering design, I can tell you that humans are indeed just below the angels, as I shall explain in the talk. But also, the Bible actually says that God gave the gift of music in Genesis 4 and the gift of craft work. So the Bible specifically mentions, and the Bible has a lot to say about music. Music's a key area where, a really good example of where we are over-designed. According to the philosophy of this world, it's some great fluke that we're able to sing and play music, but it's exactly what you'd expect if God had designed us. So according to the philosophy of this world, especially evolutionary theory, which I don't believe in, and many of my colleagues don't believe in either, even non-Christian colleagues, although they can't say that to the press, but speaking as an insider in universities, there's a huge amount of skepticism about the theory of evolution. But according to evolution, we evolved from ape-like creatures, and that we are just evolved for survival. According to evolution, every part of your body is explained by being a hunter-gatherer. Your hands are just evolved to hold a spear, to throw a punch, to dig a hole, to do crude things. And your eyes and your head, they're just evolved to throw a spear. According to evolution, you are not evolved to play music or to write creatively or to sing or to that's just a big fluke according to evolution. So I know for a fact that many evolutionists really scratch their heads as trying to explain why humans can do so much. In fact, a key proponent of the theory of evolution, Stephen Jones, made this admission. It's a very honest statement. He said, evolution does its job as well as it needs to, and no more. That is an amazing admission. If he really thought about that and then thought of the wonder of the human being, I'm sure he would doubt his faith in evolution, because according to evolution, we should not be able to do clever things beyond throwing spears. My own experience, many years in academia, firstly at Cambridge University, now at Bristol University. I work in engineering design, but also in biomechanics. I've worked on the human jaw. I've worked on the human hand in robotics. I've worked a lot on the knee joint. And I've worked on the human foot. Most recently, in the last couple of years, I've published a lot of papers on the human knee joint in the top journals in the world. So I know firsthand that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we are over-designed. A lot of the things I'm talking about come from my first-hand experience of research and teaching. I mentioned I've published a lot of papers. These are 3 papers here on the human knee, published in the last couple of years. In the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, it's the top journal for mechanical engineering science. And if you read those papers, you kind of get an idea that I think we're fearfully and wonderfully made, though I don't quote that verse, 'cause otherwise the papers wouldn't have got in. Some of my biomedical work has been exhibited in the Royal Society in London. I have produced 2 books. On the left, a book. On the right, a booklet. This booklet on the right has a lot of pictures. It's a very easy to read booklet. And in the booklet, I describe 10 particular features that make humans unique compared to other creatures. And I really believe this is very encouraging to know these 10 particular features that make each one of us very special, very different to creatures. It shows that we are not evolved from creatures, but that's not the main point of my talk. The main point of my talk is to show how you are very special. We really take our design for granted, the design of our hands, our brains, every day. We just take it for granted, but we should really give thanks to God for the way He has designed us. So I'll go through these 10 unique features now. First of all, we have a unique bipedal design. There are approximately 4,000 mammals in the world, and we are the only mammal that is a bipedal, walking on 2 legs. All of the other mammals are quadrupeds. They walk on 4 limbs, including apes. So we are completely different to apes. They walk on 4 limbs. We walk on 2. You often hear a debate about whether man is 5% different or 6% different to chimpanzees. And my colleagues ask me whether I think we are 5% different or 6% different. And I say, no, I don't. I think we are 100% different to chimpanzees. And my colleagues are astonished, and they say, well, why is that? And I say, well, the mistake you're making is you're looking at the DNA. What you need to do is to look at the human being. If you look at us from the outside, you see, and all 10 features really that I'm presenting today show that if you look from the outside, we are 100% different to chimpanzees, because a biped is 100% different to a quadruped. If you look at what we do, we are totally different. So this argument about 5 or 6% is a silly argument, because it's 100%. It's very strict. And there are many features that are necessary to make a biped a 2-legged creature. I give lectures on this at my university. Just to summarize, here are something like 10 features that make you upright. You have upright balance. In your ears, you have 3 semicircular canals. And the 2 in the vertical plane are very large. The 1 in the horizontal plane is very small. Totally different to an ape. They have 3 equally sized, because they're moving around trees in 3 dimensions. So we have unique vertical balance. We have a flat face, so we see the ground below. When we walk and run, we don't trip. Apes find it very hard to walk and run. Well, they can't run. They find it hard to walk because their chin sticks out. They can't see what's below. We have an upright neck joint with the foramen magnum underneath the skull. At the bottom, apes have it at the back because of the way they walk horizontally. Then we have upright spine, a special S shape. We have upright legs, upright joints, and we even have a special foot for standing up. Now, within those 10 features, there are hundreds of design details, and you can't evolve step by step from a four-legged creature to a two-legged creature. Otherwise, you couldn't be either a two-legged creature or a four-legged creature. So it's what's called an irreducible design. You're either a four-legged creature or a two-legged creature. So these pictures are wrong. The pictures you often see in school books. Many children see those books and see those pictures and assume they are based on real scientific evidence. They don't realize these are complete figments of imagination. And even secular scientists will admit that is not based on a shred of evidence, but purely speculation. But sadly, it's presented as scientific fact in books, and it is actually impossible to evolve a four-legged creature to a two-legged creature. It's a myth, and it's a completely deceiving diagram. Of all those features, if I just focus on one for a minute, and that is the human foot. It's the most, one of the most wonderful parts of your body. You may not think so when you're putting your socks on in the morning, but it is a wonderful, it's actually a marvel of mechanical design. On the right is an ape's foot, which is just like a hand, and it has a big toe like a thumb. An ape's foot has to be like a hand because it has to grip branches in the tree. So an ape really has four hands, two on its arms, two on its legs. But we have a foot, and it's unique in the whole of creation. Our foot is like an arched bridge, and even has the keystone at the top. Right at the top is a keystone, a specially wedged bone, precisely shaped to be a keystone, just like a keystone in an arched bridge. It's another irreducible structure. And because we have this arched foot, it's very easy to stand up. I can stand up because I can feel the front of my feet. I can feel the back of my feet, so I can rock forward and back, and I can feel my balance. If we had flat feet, we'd be wobbling all over the place. And if an ape stood next to me, he'd be wobbling, and I'd only need to huff on him and he'd probably fall over, because it's really hard to stand with flat feet. And not only do we have this stiff arch, because our hands are very flexible, and the stiff arch makes it easy to stand. If you want to know what it's like for an ape to stand up and walk, do a handstand, and then start walking on your hand, and do that for about 5 minutes. And then that's how it feels for an ape. An ape is not designed to walk on two limbs. An amazing thing about the human foot is, as we walk and run, it changes from being flexible to stiff. As we do the walking motion, it becomes flexible, but when we land and stand, it becomes stiff. It's amazing how it can be so both stiff and flexible at the same time. Imagine an arched bridge suddenly becoming a flexible bridge. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? But that's what the human foot does. And the human foot is even more special than that, because there are actually 3 arches in the human foot. There are 2 to the front, one to the big toe, one to the little toe, and one across the front from the little toe to the big toe. Because it's 3-point contact, any engineers here will know it's easy to stand on one leg, because you just put your balance through those 3 points on the ground. Apes cannot stand on one leg because they cannot they don't have 3 points to put the center of gravity through. So humans can uniquely stand on one leg. My middle daughter will do a demonstration. I wouldn't recommend you do it this way, but humans in all kinds of ways can stand on one leg. Leonardo da Vinci was an incredibly great scientist, and he believed in a creator, and he said, the human foot is a work of art and a masterpiece of design. But that quotation is not told to children because it is not a humanistic quotation. There's a lot of unnatural selection that goes on in all the quotations that children are told. We have unique agility on two legs. We can run long distances. Humans can run amazingly, up to 150 miles in one single day. There are lots of people who can do that with training, and a unique agility when playing sports. When God designed man, I have no doubt he had in mind us enjoying sports. Absolutely no doubt. He had tennis in mind. No doubt that he had golf in mind when he designed man. I have to confess, I don't think man is designed for American football. I don't think we're designed for that game. So the first unique feature, you're special and unique because you stand upright. But secondly, our skillful hands make us unique. This is a picture courtesy of Gray's Anatomy. It's a brilliant anatomist. If you could pull the skin off your hand, you would see this underneath. An incredible network of muscles, the darkly coloured parts, and tendons, the clear parts. And what Gray does, he shows the anatomy at different stages. So the index finger is showing the sheath that keeps the tendon in, and notice how it's spiral wrapped, as if a craftsman has wrapped that tendon on. The middle finger shows the tendon splitting both sides of the joint, so that the joint is really flexible and not stiff, doesn't go over the top. By going around the sides, it makes it beautifully smooth. And as an engineer who's tried to replicate the human hand in robots, it's very humbling to look at the human hand. It is a miracle of mechanical design. And it has unique features. The fine tendons, the very fine muscle control. We have tiny muscle bundles in our hand because all muscle comes in a hierarchical structure. The human muscle bundles have very tiny bundles, and it means that musicians, surgeons, cooks have precise movement of their fingers, far more precise than it needs to be, an example of over-design. We have millions of touch sensors to make fingers very sensitive, and we have a flat hand. Apes don't, they have a curved hand to hook onto branches. Having a flat hand means we can make every position for sign language, for skill. And we can make a pinch grip, not just a pinch grip, but a circular pinch grip where every finger can touch the thumb. Apes can't do that. And that gives us the skill for holding multiple objects and doing skillful tasks like knitting. Knitting is an incredible skill. It involves multiple grips with each hand, multiple pinch grips. When people do it, it looks easy, but it's an incredibly skillful task. No one's built a robot that can do knitting. And the hand is a uniquely precise design. On the right is a robot I helped to design, and it was a very humbling thing, trying to replicate a hand, because it was nowhere near as elegant and high performing as the human hand. And just to give you a very specific example of over-design, and this is one of many examples that gives a gigantic headache to an evolutionist. You see, the evolutionist tries to explain every single feature of the human body in terms of survival, in terms of being a hunter-gatherer or an ape man, So if you ever do have a debate with an evolutionist, ask them how to explain we can hold a pen. Because our hand is perfectly designed to hold a pen with what's called the tripod grip, with the middle finger, index finger and thumb. Those three fingers come together in a perfect tripod. As if, and I believe we are designed to hold a pen. According to evolution, we are not designed to hold a pen. It's just a huge coincidence. But there are many such huge coincidences, which I think points to a creator. If you're an evolutionist, you have to say something like, well, there were these ape men who lived in caves. And if you could fill in a cave council tax rebate form, you had a greater chance of survival. And therefore, if you could hold a pen, and I'm not joking, but some of the stories are literally like that when it comes to explaining every feature of the human being. So a simple thing like holding a pen it's exactly what you'd expect if God had designed us, but not if we had evolved by chance. Secular scientists have found that when you discover a tribe in a Borneo jungle or an Aboriginal tribe from Australia, when those people become westernized, within one generation, they are capable of playing concert-level music, even though they supposedly had never lived outside a jungle or never lived outside the desert. And scientists are astonished that they can play the violin and the cello and the piano and the clarinet. This great coincidence, but that is exactly what you'd expect if God had designed us. And when you read the Psalms and the Bible, it's clear we are designed to play music. Thirdly, we have fine skin. And by the way, each of these unique aspects are not disputed. Secular science agrees with all 10 of these unique aspects. They don't like to talk about them, which is heard about them, because they're embarrassing. But they are admitted. They don't agree with my conclusions, but it is a fact. We have unique fine skin. In fact, biology books call us a naked ape, a very strange kind of ape because we're naked. But we're not a naked ape, we are a wonderful human being. We have uniquely fine touch sensors, we have a unique number of sweat glands, we have a subcutaneous layer of fat under our skin to keep us warm, because we don't have fur, and we have vitamin D production. These are unique things. Now that there is a simplified picture of human skin, very simplified, and yet it is an awe-inspiring picture. An engineer looks at that and feels faint, because an engineer couldn't dream of making these intricate sensors and pipeworks. I know engineers who've tried to make artificial skin, and it is just pathetic compared to the real thing. And real skin can repair itself and maintain itself. And humans have unique skin sensors. A pressure sensor is a very sophisticated kind of sensor. We have millions of these things. And they're different. Some sensors are for heavy loads, some for light loads, some for long-lasting loads, some for short-lasting loads. So as you touch things and you enjoy the sense of touch, you don't realize there's incredible technology behind those sensors. And one of the things we take for granted, as I said, many of these things we take for granted. One of the things I'm sure you haven't really thought a lot about is because we have fine skin, it's easy to adjust our clothing. We once had a Labrador, a lovely black Labrador, and if he ran too much, he did run too much. He was too energetic. But when he ran too much, he got very hot, and it's as if he wanted to take his coat off, but because he couldn't take his coat off, he just had to calm down, which was good for 20 minutes. But we can take our clothes off. We can therefore play hard and work hard. But animals have to be very careful about getting too hot. If you want to know what it's like to have fur, run 5 miles with a heavy coat and then leave it on at the end and try to cool down by sticking your tongue out And then you know what it's like being a dog, trying to cool down just by sticking your tongue out. It takes a long time to cool down. But we are also over-designed. We have this ability of appreciating the sense of touch, touching flowers and different surfaces, touching the baby's skin, touching human skin. It's one of these things you would expect if God had designed us. But our fine skin is not what you'd expect if we had evolved by chance. From head to toe, the human being is an embarrassment to the theory of evolution. It is exactly what you would not expect by chance. This is my favourite one, number 4, because I did a lot of research on this. In fact, I just published a paper on this in Australia, and it's our unique facial expressions. Every day we are affected by other people's facial expressions. Even during this talk, I can tell how you feel about the talk. So I just look at your expressions, and we don't think about it, but we react to other people without being conscious of it. And often the fastest way to communicate, if we're very happy or very sad, is firstly through a facial expression. Apes do not have facial muscles dedicated to facial expressions, but we do. We have double the number of facial muscles compared to apes, as shown by Gray's anatomy picture again. Children are often told in schools they have the same number of bones as a chimpanzee, because the books want them to think like chimpanzees and monkeys. What modern books won't tell the children is we have a completely different number of muscles. The reason they don't tell them that is because they don't want them to think we're different to apes. But the muscles are the most important part of our body. We have completely different muscles to chimpanzees and apes. And they are a marvel of design. You see this very delicate muscle here and muscle here, muscle here. They're not found on apes, these separate little muscles. Their sole function is for us to smile. An ape cannot smile because it doesn't have those muscles. Our ability to smile is just what you'd expect if God had designed us. God has designed us to be emotional and spiritual beings, and it's wonderful that he's given us a physical design that enables us to express our emotions and our spiritual feelings. As a designer, I find that just amazing that he combines that physical, emotional design. Secular scientists are astonished at human being to make expressions. And they've even counted the number of expressions that humans can make. They've literally sat in a lab and added them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how many expressions do you think humans can make? It's a big number, because not only do we have lots of emotions, anger, surprise, grief, happiness, joy, but you can combine those emotions. You can have a surprised joy, happiness. So it's a very large number. That's my youngest son. So these are some of the expressions you can have: aggression, desperation, puzzlement, concentration. But as I say, scientists have actually added up the number. And it's a lot. By the way, this goes back to the smiling one. Smiling is not needed for survival. It's very difficult for an evolutionist to explain. How is it that every human being in the world can smile? Why is it that we could only survive if we could smile? What is the story that goes to explain that feature? Well, it turns out we can make 10,000 different facial expressions. Now, even if evolution could explain why we should make expressions, which it can't, but if it could, we should only be able to make a few facial expressions, because as Steve Jones said, if evolution, if it ever worked, if it could work, it does its job and no more. So we shouldn't have this over-design, these 10,000 facial expressions. But that is exactly what you'd expect if God had designed us, because the God of the Bible is a God of abundance, grace abounding, justice abounding. God supplies water in abundance. Book of Job, food in abundance. So this abundant facial expression is exactly what you'd expect God had designed us. You see why you don't hear about these unique features in books. As soon as a book explains it, it's impossible to explain if you're not a biblical creationist. There's actually a verse in the book of Job that says, I will take off my sad face and put on a smile. It literally says that. So Job understood about facial expressions. I asked my youngest son to know of facial expressions. And I asked him, how do you look if I tell you I have caught you being naughty? And he said, this is how he looks. So he did a range of expressions. So I've caught him being naughty. So I said, how do you look? He's a very good actor. He was only 5 at the time. After this, I was very suspicious of him. And I said, how do you look if I tell you your punishment? And he said, this is how I look. And then I said, how do you look if I tell you I let you off your punishment? And he said, that's how I then look. Looks very big. So he's a very good actor. But the point of this picture is to show you, even at the age of 5, a young child has an incredible ability to move all of those. He is moving 25 muscles under his skin in different directions to make a facial expression. How does a 5-year-old child know how to move 25 different muscles, different positions, to get different facial expressions? That is a really interesting question. But as we grow up, we do these miraculous things, we learn, but only because we are brilliantly designed in the first place. Another feature of expression is the whites of the eyes. Humans are unique in having the whites, the sclera of the eyes. With animals, you may have noticed, with your pets, it can be quite difficult to know which way they're looking. You don't see the whites of their eyes. It's unique to humans. And again, evolutionists are utterly confused. Why is it that we can see the whites of the eyes? But it's exactly what you'd expect if God had designed us, because God wants us to be good at communicating, to see across a room, to see who's looking at us. That's what God would do, designing us to be intelligent human beings. As one of my evolutionary colleagues admitted to me, having the whites of the eyes is a bit of an odd thing by evolution, because it would mean that an ape man would be able to see what other ape man was looking at his girlfriend, and he'd then go and kill him. So it wouldn't be much of a survival advantage for ape men. It's a very interesting confession. But it's the kind of thing that causes a big headache to the evolutionists. Fifthly, unique language and speech, if you don't have laryngitis. Humans have 1 million words in the English language, which, by the way, is 100% different to apes. They have no words in their language, so that makes 100% difference. And it's remarkable that we speak so much, because according to evolution, if we were hunters, we wouldn't really talk a lot, be very quiet. And again, scientists have sat down and added up how many words we speak a day, and it's been found that the average man speaks 4,000 words a day, and more interestingly, the average woman speaks 8,000 words a day. And before any man feels smug about that, that means that women are twice as over-designed as men. So it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing to talk a lot. And our speech production is another one of these miraculous things that we just take for granted. But it is a miracle of mechanical design. We have these unique features, we have fine vocal folds which vibrate. However, if you have laryngitis, you don't have fine vocal folds. They're kind of crumply, and it makes your throat croak continually as you speak. But anyway, you probably have fine vocal folds at the moment, and we have a deep throat. Apes do not have a deep throat, so they can't even be taught to speak. And we even have an ideal length of mouth and depth of throat, they're very equal, which is ideal for resonance. And we have an amazing tongue, which is very agile and moves all around the mouth. And it's so agile, notice it can make these shapes. As you speak, you won't realize it until the next time you speak, perhaps, but your tongue is moving all over the place to make a different shape. Every sound you make, it's moving up and down and back and forward, and it creates a different shape in your mouth, and that different shape creates a different sound. You learn it as a 2-year-old and then forget what you're doing. Up to 100 muscles are moving in your body as you speak. So these are 2 typical sounds, O and R. If you're from the West Country, it's more like oo, R. From where I come from. We also have fine lips to release pressure. So if you make a P or a B, you hold your mouth, you create pressure and suddenly release it with your fine lips, like a P, like that. And again, it's a very skillful thing that you just take for granted. You also have a big area of software in your brain. A lot of the things I've spoken about, God has made the software as well as the hardware in the body. 2 things have to go together. So speech is just an incredible thing. If anyone asks you for the best evidence of design in the human being, in fact, the best evidence of creation anywhere, often someone will say, give me your best evidence. I would recommend mentioning singing. Tell them to go and hear a Welsh choir. And then ask themselves, is this a product of random evolution? Or is this something that they would expect if God had created man? Humans have an amazing ability to sing. And that is exactly what you'd expect. God designed us to be worshipping beings, to sing praises to God. But singing is yet another thing that utterly confuses the atheist. Why could we only survive if we had the capability of stupendous ability to sing with great beauty and feeling? We also have a unique childhood because we have this long childhood up to 18 years. Animals are mature by the first or second winter so they can survive in the wild, but humans are completely, utterly different. There's amazing triples during childhood, again, that is completely different to creatures, and it's a time for learning language and speech. I often give this particular talk in the United States. I have a DVD today which was actually filmed of this talk here, filmed in the United States. I have a lot of teasing jokes to the Americans, and one of them is, I notice in America childhood lasts until 28, and they know exactly what I mean, and they find that very funny because all their children are still at home at 28, still playing games on the computer. But it should be 18 years old. And this was, when I got to this one, I particularly wanted to go to the biology library at my university because I wanted to know what does the atheists say about the wonderful childhood that humans have. I also wanted to know what they thought about the other wonderful features. And when I read through these biology books, modern secular biology books that are mostly evolutionary, and I was very, very sad because with all of the unique features of man, instead of saying these are wonderful and we shouldn't take them for granted, And it's wonderful how we're designed. In each case, they said, this is embarrassing. We are so strange. It's like we're stupid. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. And it even said that our childhood is something we should be embarrassed about. It's as if we're born premature. We have to stay in a family. And how this is strange. And we should try and change our ways to be more like an animal. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. There was no celebration of the wonderful design of man. And I thought, it's no wonder in the last 100 years, society has gone down, art has gone down, music has gone down, expectations of children has gone right down, because modern secular science wants us to be just a crude animal, not a supremely well designed being. This is my youngest son, when he was younger than when he did those smiles. And at the age of 2, I asked him how he would like to illustrate childhood for my talk. And so he told me exactly what he would like to do. And it involved jumping off the patio into the swimming pool. So that was his summary of the joy of childhood. Another thing that makes humans unique is marriage and reproduction, although in the wisdom of modern man, we're trying to get rid of this unique feature of get rid of marriage. But that's how God has designed us. He designed marriage, and humans are different in that marriage is primarily about companionship. Animals will never get together for companionship. It's always to procreate, to produce offspring. Only humans are aware of nakedness. Animals are not embarrassed. The female fertile period is all through the year. Our birthdays will go from January to December. With animals, it's almost always at particular times of the year. And a woman's time of ovulation is hidden. And that is unique to humans. With animals, there's always a sign of the ovulation. So these things are very unique. There are other unique things about human beings. A woman's breasts are unique. With animals, they're only there when the milk is there. Production is different. In particular, a baby's skull deforms to allow birth, and I've seen that myself with my own children. Humans also have a unique brain, unique cerebral cortex, grey matter, unique intelligence, and an incredible memory. So human brains are a really good example of how we are over-designed. Amazing part of our brain is the part of the brain that controls muscles is called the cortex. And a quarter of cerebral cortex dedicated to the hands and a quarter dedicated to the muscles of the face. So despite the fact we have 650 muscles in the body, half the brain is dedicated to hands and face, showing that we are designed to do special things, skillful things, and designed to make facial expressions. We are designed to be emotional beings, designed for greatness, not designed to be hunter-gatherers and people who fight with their hands. And we have the amazing ability to memorize vast amounts of information. There are special competitions that take place because people are so good at memorizing things. One of the famous competitions is to memorize the number pi. If you remember from your maths and physics days, there's this special number called pi. It's very difficult to remember because it has no pattern to it. And so you have these competitions where people try and remember this number. I say people, it's always men who try to remember pi, and that's not because they are cleverer than women, it's actually because they're stupid. It's a stupid thing to remember. pi. So pi, let's see if I can remember some of it. 3.14159. I'll start again, because I'm not feeling too well. 3.1415926535897932384. Is that right? That's 20 decimal places. So that's 20 decimal places. The world record is held by a Japanese man, just broken the world record. The world record is 100,000 decimal places. It took this Japanese man all his life, his entire life was spent memorizing pi. It took him about 60 years, and it was a very stupid thing to do. But I'm actually glad he did it, because it demonstrates the amount of the human mind. That is a phenomenon. It has no pattern, and yet, over the course of about a week, he can go through 100,000 numbers. And if you get one wrong, you have to start all over again. It's a tough competition. Here's another example of over-design in the human brain. In 2002, a poor little Dutch girl had a terrible disease in her brain. The surgeons had to remove half her brain. And when they told her parents it would be the entire left side of her brain, they said following the operation she will not be able to speak, she will not be able to understand, and she will never be able to speak, because they had to remove the whole of the left side, and the whole speech centre was on the left side of the brain. And following the operation, thankfully, the girl survived. But just as the surgeon said, she had no ability to speak whatsoever. She lost it completely. She couldn't even understand what her parents were saying. Then, 4 years later, at the age of 7, her parents brought her back to the surgeons and said, our little girl is fluent in Dutch and Turkish, in 2 languages, completely, utterly fluent. And they said to the parents, I'm sorry, but that's not possible. And they said, well, I'm sorry, but here she is. You can study her. And they studied her, and they studied her notes. And this is what they said. The head surgeon said, it was amazing. I told my students to forget all the neurophysiology they were learning. It's an amazing comment, isn't it? So often, scientists think they know everything. And so often, they totally underestimate what God has made. That is the problem with humanism and evolution. Many people say to me, you're very odd, Stuart, because you totally skeptical and do not believe in evolution. What do your colleagues think of you? And I say to them, my colleagues agree with me. To which people are astonished. I know very senior professors at my institution, professors of microbiology, who are not Christians. And they say to me, evolution is complete, utter rubbish. And I say to them, why do you say that? And they say, I'm an international famous professor of microbiology. I know my science, and I know it doesn't work. And I say, why didn't you tell the press? And they say, I can't. I will be sacked or demoted. Sadly, I go into a school and I speak to an A-level biology teacher, and they say, I totally accept evolution because all these professors believe it, so I believe it. And I say to them, well, actually, your professors don't believe in it, so think again. We also have unique beauty. You've probably seen this picture several times, but you may not have appreciated that if you put your arms out, you fit into a square, because fingertip to fingertip is the same as your height. It's the same for everyone, so you all fit into a square of a different size. Your legs are halfway up the square. If you do a star jump, the center of the star jump is your belly button. And Leonardo da Vinci was fascinated by that. And there are also golden ratios. If you look at our smooth skin, the delicate hair on our head, delicate facial features, we are a model of beauty, as I explain to my students when I'm teaching them aesthetics in car design. But most of all, we have a unique soul, a unique mind, heart, will, and conscience. And this is something modern science totally rejects. According to them, we're just a collection of atoms, just an animal. But this is the biggest difference between what secular science teaches and what the Bible teaches. We have awareness and rational thought. My Labrador never had awareness. He never thought, am I the best looked after Labrador in Trowbridge? He was just very happy with what he got. And he never stopped to look at a sunset and jump for joy, the beauty of creation. He didn't have those kind of emotions. And most of all, we have powers of choice. Every second we make decisions to do this or to do that, to think this. Animals follow their instinct. Even my Labrador, when you really think about it, he followed his instinct, which was to eat anything. Whereas people make decisions. And because we make decisions, we have a moral awareness and a moral conscience. We stand on each other's toes, we annoy people, we sin against our neighbour and against God, which is why each one of us are sinners, and each one of us has a need to say sorry to God and to look for salvation through the Lord Jesus Christ, to trust in his death on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins, to get back into a right relationship with God. This is my dog Benji. It's called Black Labrador. And when I was on a speaking tour in America, my children sent me a picture of my beautiful flower bed, which I made before I left for America. And my first thought when I saw Benji in my flower bed, with my flowers in his mouth, my first thought was, well, he's only doing what he's designed to do, which is to make his own bed. So I wasn't annoyed with him at all, because he didn't sin, he was just following it. So I've been through the 10 things that make you special and unique and show that you are created, not evolved by chance. Just to answer a couple of objections. I'm not sure if I have any voice left to answer questions, so I'll just answer them now. One of them is this: how about disease and deformity? Because obviously not everything is wonderful. If you have arthritis, that's not wonderful. But it's to do with the curse on creation. As the Bible explains that Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they rebelled. And it's because of that that God cursed creation. Arthritis and diseases were not in God's original plan. God made the world perfect without disease and death. But because of our rebellion, there is disease and death. Despite disease, you can still conclude we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We still have a brilliant design. People then ask about vestigial organs, like the appendix. Is that really needed? Could that be a sign that it was a relic of an old evolutionary ancestor? Creation speakers have pointed out that we have no vestigial organs in our whole body. If we had evolved, we would have hundreds of them, hundreds of things that were from past life. But secular scientists are now admitting that what they thought were vestigial organs were in fact a sign of the ignorance of modern science of what things do. To give you one example, it's now known the appendix is very important in the immune system, especially for young people. There are lots of things we can get by with. We could get by with one eye, one ear, but it's not best to. And it's best to have your appendix as opposed to not having it. We don't have any vestigial organs. Then objection 3 is bad design. If you read Richard Dawkins' books, he says things like the human eye is not just bad design of a complete idiot. But it's easy to answer that objection. Richard Dawkins doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know anything about design. If he was on my first year design course, he would fail. He knows nothing about the principles. Design, the human eye is a brilliant design. All my colleagues at my university, Christian, non-Christian, agree the human eye is a brilliant design. He doesn't understand how the eye. He hopes the eye is badly designed, because if it was, that would support evolution. Just to mention about the origins battle, sadly, creation is banned today from the classroom. It's a big issue at the moment, and it shows there's a spiritual battle. A lot of my students say to me, even the non-Christian students say to me they are interested in creation evolution, not because of the science, but because of the emotion. I've given a few talks in my university and other universities, and when the students see the anger of the atheists and the anger of some of the biologists, they say to me, why are they so worried? Why are they so defensive? Why are they so emotional? I need to look into this a bit more, because there's something strange going on here. And it shows a spiritual battle. The truth is creationist beliefs are censored. When I was presenting at the Royal Society in London, there was a famous scientist called John Hutton Balfour, and it had some of his books on display, and it covered up the pages that spoke about the Bible, as if the Royal Society were embarrassed about the fact that he was a Christian. And the most bizarre censorship. I've been censored and attacked myself. I once mentioned a creationist talk at the end of a lecture, and I then was reported to the press just for mentioning one word. On Open Day, I often give a big Open Day talk. I have done for the last 10 years at Bristol University. On the day I give that talk at University College London, Steve Jones gives a talk, Open Day talk, and his subject of his talk is an attack on creationism. But if I mentioned one sentence, I would be censored for doing that. And I've also been reported for advertising talks by block email. In fact, a first-year Christian hacked into the university email system and invited the entire university to one of my talks, which was totally illegal. And I got the blame for it. I nearly got sacked for it. I did spot him in the very talk that he did that. I saw him there smiling at the back of the room. Actually, I remember now, after that talk, it was meant to be a talk for 10 Christians in the Christian Union, but he invited the whole university, and 500 people turned up, including half of the biology department. And the topic of the talk was the talk I gave today. And there were 490 non-Christians and 10 Christians. When I spotted that Christian smiling at the back, I prayed for him. I prayed that God would make him fail his exams. It was a very emotional talk, a very difficult talk, actually, with very senior professors who were very angry. But after the talk, had these emails. I think this was a non-Christian biology student who said the biology department asked people to oppose your point of view, and questions had been prepared. No matter what I said, an attitude I find strange as a student. Another person said the talk was amazing, being turned away as we packed out. I was very suspicious when they changed the venue from a room like this to the biggest lecture theatre in the engineering department. And they mentioned the angry biologist, and someone else said it had a big impact. The next day I bumped into the head of school of one part of the engineering faculty and asked if he heard the lecture. And he said there isn't one single person in the entire university who wasn't talking about this lecture, Christian Union lecture, the day before. There are two worldviews. There's the evolution worldview. This is what evolution says. We are just a bit of slime on a planet. That's an Oxford professor saying that. Peter Atkins. It's wonderful being an atheist, isn't it? just a bit of slime on a planet. But it's Psalm 8 where we read, you have made man a little lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor. Sadly, children are not taught in schools. According to evolution, rape is a good thing. That's how man evolved. And we are not precious. I agree with this guy who said it's disastrous to teach young people they've evolved from animals. He's a famous Cambridge scientist, the father of modern electronics, but of course children aren't told this kind of quote. It's the wrong quote. I was once accused of that quote on page 2 of the Times, even though it wasn't me who said it. It was Ambrose Fleming who said it, but I nearly got sacked because journalists from the Times said, no, it was me who said it. They didn't check with me, but I just found out when my colleagues were reading the newspaper in the common room. So we are designed for more than survival. A bright stature is for stewardship of creation. That explains stand up to be stewards of creation. We are designed for creativity and pleasure. We are designed for greatness. And it's so sad that we don't have high expectations of children and other people. We have a voice for communicating, a voice to sing praises to God, a brain to comprehend God's word, and a body worthy of the Lord Jesus Christ. I'll mention very briefly, I have some resources on the back table. My voice has run out, so I can't have any questions, and I've run out of time anyway. It's nearly 10 to 9. I will be leaving in 15 or 16 minutes, so you have to buy these quite quickly. The booklet is there in God's image. Everything is basically nearly half price. The booklets are £2, the books are £4, and the DVDs, they're not quite half price. The DVDs are £8. The two on the left were produced in the United States. The one on the right is more of a kind of a home DVD made in Bath in Royal Victoria Park. This one is really today's talk, and that's when I gave it in the United States. This one is about hummingbirds. If you like birds or hummingbirds, the second one is good. I'm just one of several scientists talking about hummingbirds. The one on the right is me strolling through Royal Victoria Park talking about beauty. And then the books are pretty self-explanatory. So the books are £4, the DVDs are £8. I do apologise for my croaky voice, but I hope you found that encouraging. Thank you.